I'm Amanda Reynolds, 27, and until last year, I had it all: a promising tech career, a beautiful Seattle apartment, and a future full of possibilities. Then came the accident that nearly killed me. As I lay broken in that hospital bed, I heard my parents tell the doctors, "She's just a burden. Let her go." They left me to die, not knowing I could hear every word. A week later, they returned. Not for me, but for my grandmother's inheritance. They had no idea what I had planned. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories about family betrayal and sweet revenge. My childhood wasn't exactly a Norman Rockwell painting. My parents, James and Catherine Reynolds, were the kind of people who viewed children as accessories rather than human beings with emotions and needs. From my earliest memories, I felt like an afterthought in their carefully curated lives. Dad was a corporate attorney who worked 70-hour weeks, and Mom managed an upscale boutique while maintaining her image as the perfect suburban wife. They were physically present, but emotionally absent. When my brother Michael came along when I was 6, everything changed, but not for the better. Michael instantly became the golden child. While I had always been expected to achieve perfection without praise, Michael received standing ovations for the most basic accomplishments. When I brought home straight A's, it was expected. When Michael managed to get B's, there were celebrations and rewards. "Amanda, why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my teenage years, despite the fact that I was outperforming him in every measurable way. It made no sense, but family dynamics rarely do. The only person who ever made me feel truly valued was my grandmother Eleanor, my father's mother. Grandma Eleanor was everything my parents weren't: warm, attentive, and genuinely interested in my life. Her modest home in the countryside became my sanctuary. Every summer and many weekends were spent with her, baking cookies, working in her garden, and talking about books and dreams. "You're special, Amanda," she would tell me, her blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise, especially not your father. He means well, but he doesn't understand what truly matters in life." As I grew older, Grandma Eleanor became more vocal about her disapproval of my parents' priorities. "They're chasing the wrong things," she'd say. "Money, status, appearances, none of it matters in the end." On my 18th birthday, as I prepared to leave for college, Grandma Eleanor took me aside. "I want you to know something, Amanda. One day, what I have will be yours. I've made arrangements. Use it wisely to build the life you deserve, not the one others expect." I hugged her, not fully understanding the significance of her words. I wasn't thinking about inheritances or money. I was just grateful to have someone who believed in me. College was my first taste of true independence. I'd received a partial scholarship to Washington State University, but it wasn't enough to cover all expenses. My parents could have easily afforded to help, but they refused, saying I needed to learn responsibility. Meanwhile, they paid for Michael's full ride to a private university without hesitation. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load in business administration. Mornings at a coffee shop, evenings waiting tables, and weekends doing data entry for a local company. It was exhausting, but it taught me self-reliance and grit. I graduated with honors, minimal debt, and a determination to succeed on my own terms. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at TechFuture, a promising startup in Seattle developing healthcare applications. I threw myself into the work, advancing quickly from project coordinator to team leader within 2 years. By 25, I was one of the youngest product managers in the company, overseeing the development of an app designed to help patients navigate complex medical systems. During those years, contact with my family dwindled to obligatory holiday calls and the occasional tense dinner when I visited Grandma Eleanor. My parents seemed perpetually disappointed in my career choice. Why tech instead of law or medicine? While simultaneously boasting to their friends about my accomplishments when it suited them. Michael had followed our father into law, working at the same prestigious firm, which was apparently the only acceptable career path. The only bright spot in my personal life was Thomas, a software engineer I met at a tech conference. Unlike my family, Thomas really saw me, and valued both my strengths and vulnerabilities. After 2 years together, we were discussing moving in together, planning a future that felt secure and genuine for the first time in my life. The day of the accident began like any other. I had a major presentation about our newest application, which went exceptionally well. The CEO personally congratulated me, hinting at a possible promotion. Thomas took me out for a celebration dinner at my favorite waterfront restaurant. To the smartest, most determined woman I know, he toasted, raising his glass of champagne. You're extraordinary, Amanda, and I'm so proud of you. It was nearly midnight when we left the restaurant. Thomas offered to drive me home, but I declined since I had my car. I'll see you tomorrow, I said, kissing him goodbye in the parking lot. Love you. Love you too, he replied. Text me when you get home. The rain had started falling heavily, creating a slick sheen on the roads. I drove cautiously, maintaining a steady speed as I wound through the hills toward my apartment. I remember checking my rearview mirror, seeing headlights approaching too quickly behind me. Before I could react, the other vehicle, later identified as driven by a drunk driver, slammed into my rear bumper at high speed. What happened next came in flashes, my car spinning out of control, the horrifying sensation of tires losing traction on wet asphalt, the guardrail giving way as my vehicle plunged down the embankment, the sickening crunch of metal folding around me. And then darkness. The last conscious thought I had was of Thomas, waiting for a text message that wouldn't come. I drifted in and out of consciousness for what felt like days. Pain became my constant companion, a searing presence that enveloped every inch of my body. When I finally managed to open my eyes, the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room made me wince. A heart monitor beeped steadily beside me, and tubes seemed to connect me to various machines. A nurse noticed I was awake and quickly called for a doctor. Dr. William Carter introduced himself as the lead trauma surgeon who had been overseeing my care. You've been through quite an ordeal, Ms. Reynolds, he said, his voice gentle but direct. Your car went off an embankment and rolled several times. You've suffered multiple fractures, including both legs and your right arm, for broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding that required emergency surgery, and a severe concussion. You've been unconscious for 3 days. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw from the breathing tube they had only recently removed. The nurse, Sara, offered me iced chips. Thomas, I managed to whisper. Your boyfriend has been here every day, Sara assured me. We had to force him to go home and rest a few hours ago. He'll be back soon. Dr. Carter continued explaining my condition. I would need additional surgeries to repair the damage to my legs. Recovery would be long and arduous, with months of physical therapy ahead. But I was alive, which was apparently something of a miracle given the severity of the crash. We contacted your emergency contacts when you were brought in, Dr. Carter said. Your parents were notified immediately after the accident. A cold feeling settled in my stomach that had nothing to do with my injuries. I hadn't updated my emergency contacts in years, not since college. I hadn't spoken to my parents in nearly 8 months, not since an awkward dinner where they'd spent the entire time talking about Michael's latest achievements. Have they been here? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Sara and Dr. Carter exchanged a quick glance. They came in shortly after you were admitted, Sara said carefully. They spoke with Dr. Carter and the administrative staff. There was something they weren't telling me. Before I could press further, fatigue overwhelmed me, and I drifted back to sleep. When I woke again, it was night. The room was dimly lit, and I was alone except for the steady beeping of machines. I heard voices in the hallway, hushed but distinct. My door was partially open, and through it, I could see 2 figures speaking with Dr. Carter. My parents. I don't know what instinct made me close my eyes and pretend to still be unconscious, but something in their body language triggered a warning in my mind. I kept my breathing steady as I heard them enter my room. No change. My mother's voice, cool and detached. As I explained, she woke briefly earlier today, but she's heavily sedated for the pain, Dr. Carter replied. Her injuries are extensive, but with proper care and time, she should recover. And what exactly does proper care and time entail? My father's voice now with that familiar impatient edge. Dr. Carter outlined the treatment plan, multiple surgeries, weeks in the hospital, months of rehabilitation, and significant medical expenses. As he spoke, I felt my parents' presence move closer to my bed. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs will be substantial, Dr. Carter finished. There was a long silence, and then my father spoke in a low voice that chilled me to the bone. Doctor, I appreciate your dedication, but let's be realistic. Amanda has always been difficult, headstrong. She cut us out of her life years ago. She's just been a burden her whole life. Just let her go. I fought to keep my breathing steady, to not reveal I was hearing every word. Mr. Reynolds, your daughter's condition, while serious, is not terminal, Dr. Carter responded, his tone noticeably cooler. With proper treatment, she has every chance of a full recovery. What my husband means, my mother interjected smoothly, is that perhaps extraordinary measures aren't necessary. Amanda wouldn't want to be a burden. And with her grandmother's recent passing, we're dealing with enough family trauma. Grandmother Eleanor was dead? The news hit me like another car crash. My grandmother, my only ally, was gone, and no one had even told me. If finances are a concern, Dr. Carter said stiffly, our patient advocate can discuss assistance programs. Money isn't the issue, my father interrupted. We simply think it might be kinder to let nature take its course. I heard Dr. Carter take a deep breath. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, I'm obligated to pursue all reasonable treatment options for my patient. Amanda is young and otherwise healthy. There's every reason to believe she'll recover. Fine, my father said tersely. Do what you must. But we won't be responsible for the bills. She made it clear she doesn't need our help, so she can figure this out on her own. Call us if there's any significant change in her condition. We should be going, my mother added. With Eleanor's estate matters and the funeral arrangements, we're overwhelmed. When Amanda is gone, we'll need to handle her affairs as well. They were already planning my funeral, already thinking about what possessions of mine they could claim. And what was this about Grandma Eleanor's estate? My mind raced despite the painkillers clouding my thoughts. I heard their footsteps retreating, followed by Dr. Carter's. The door closed, and I allowed myself to open my eyes, tears streaming down my face. My own parents had just suggested the doctors let me die because I was an inconvenience. Because I was a burden. I must have triggered an alarm with my elevated heart rate, because a different nurse rushed in moments later. Stephanie, according to her name badge. She saw I was awake and clearly distressed. Hey, easy there, she said, checking my monitors. You need to stay calm. Your body's been through a lot. They want me to die, I whispered, my voice breaking. My own parents. Stephanie's expression confirmed what I already knew. She had overheard at least part of the conversation. Did you hear what they said? I asked. Stephanie hesitated, then nodded. I'm so sorry. That was unprofessional of me to listen, but thank you for not pretending, I said. Everyone's always pretended everything was fine with my family. It's not fine. It's never been fine. Something in Stephanie's face softened. She pulled up a chair beside my bed. My shift just ended, but I can stay a few minutes, she said. Did you want to talk about it? And somehow, in that sterile hospital room, connected to machines that beeped and whirred, I found myself telling this stranger more about my family than I'd ever told anyone except Thomas. About growing up as the overlooked child, about Michael being the golden boy, about Grandma Eleanor being my only source of unconditional love. And now she's dead, I finished, fresh tears flowing. And they didn't even tell me. They just want me to die too, so they can, what? Claim her estate? Claim my things? Be free of the burden of having a daughter who doesn't fit their perfect image. Stephanie handed me tissues, her own eyes damp. I shouldn't say this, but those people don't deserve to be called parents. And you know what? You're not going to give them what they want. You're going to fight, recover, and show them exactly who they underestimated. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A determination unlike anything I'd felt before. I would survive, not just to spite them, but to reclaim my life and whatever Grandma Eleanor had intended for me. I need a favor, I told Stephanie. If my parents come back, don't tell them I was conscious. Don't tell them I heard everything. Let them think I'm still in critical condition. Stephanie raised an eyebrow. That would be highly unethical. I know, I admitted. But they've made it clear they're waiting for me to die so they can profit. I need time to understand what's happening with my grandmother's estate and protect myself. Stephanie was quiet for a long moment. I can't lie about your medical condition, she finally said. But patient privacy laws mean we don't have to provide details about your state of consciousness or what you remember. I'll make sure the staff knows to be discreet. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As Stephanie left, I closed my eyes again, not to sleep, but to think. My body might be broken, but my mind was clear now, focused on a single goal, survival and justice. The days that followed were a blur of pain, medication, and grueling medical procedures. I endured 2 more surgeries, one to place pins in my shattered right leg and another to address lingering internal bleeding. The physical agony was nearly unbearable, but it paled in comparison to the emotional wound left by my parents' betrayal. Thomas arrived early the morning after I first regained consciousness, his face haggard with worry. When he saw I was awake, he broke down in tears. I thought I'd lost you, he said, carefully taking my hand between his. When they called me from the hospital, they said you might not make it through the night. I told him everything. About overhearing my parents, about their callous dismissal of my life, about discovering Grandma Eleanor had died. Those monsters, he whispered, his expression shifting from shock to fury. How could they? Their own daughter. I need your help, I said, squeezing his hand weakly. I need to know what happened to my grandmother, what's in her estate, and why they're so interested in it. But I can't let them know I'm conscious and aware of what they did. Thomas nodded without hesitation. Whatever you need. I'm here. True to her word, Stephanie had spoken with the hospital staff. My official status remained critical but stable, with notes about intermittent consciousness and confusion, technically true, given the pain medication, but deliberately vague. Dr. Carter, who had clearly been disgusted by my parents' behavior, tacitly supported this approach, ensuring I received excellent care while maintaining a cautious prognosis when speaking with my family. Thomas became my lifeline to the outside world, bringing in a tablet so I could communicate with the outside world when I felt strong enough. 3 days after I first regained consciousness, I was able to stay awake long enough to search for information about Grandma Eleanor. Her obituary confirmed what I had heard. Eleanor Grace Reynolds had passed away peacefully in her sleep just 2 weeks before my accident, at the age of 78. The timing struck me as a cruel cosmic joke, losing my grandmother and nearly losing my own life within such a short span. The obituary mentioned she was survived by her son James Reynolds, daughter-in-law Catherine, and grandchildren Michael and Amanda. It requested donations to the local library in lieu of flowers, which was so perfectly Grandma Eleanor that it made me cry. She had loved that library, volunteering there well into her 70s. What the obituary didn't mention was her estate or any inheritance. For that, I needed more information. With Thomas's help, I checked my personal email, something I hadn't been able to do since the accident. Among the get well messages and work updates was an email from a law firm, Wilson, Martinez and Associates, dated 3 days before my accident. The subject line read, "Urgent. Estate of Eleanor Grace Reynolds." I opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Ms. Reynolds, my name is Rachel Wilson, attorney at law, representing the estate of your late grandmother, Eleanor Grace Reynolds. I have been attempting to reach you by phone without success. It is with great urgency that I request you contact our offices regarding your inheritance, as specified in your grandmother's last will and testament. Per your grandmother's explicit instructions, you have been named the primary beneficiary of her estate, which includes her primary residence, 2 additional properties, and substantial investment holdings. The total value exceeds $4.7 million. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss the necessary legal proceedings to transfer these assets into your name. My deepest condolences for your loss. Sincerely, Rachel Wilson, ESQ." I stared at the screen, stunned. $4.7 million? Properties? Investments? I knew Grandma Eleanor lived comfortably, but I had no idea she had accumulated such wealth. And she had left it all to me. Not to my father, not to Michael, but to me. Suddenly, my parents' behavior made perfect, horrifying sense. They must have learned about the will after Grandma Eleanor's death. They knew I stood to inherit everything, and then, by cruel coincidence, I had my accident just days later. If I died, as my father's only living child, he would likely be next in line to inherit. They hadn't come to the hospital out of parental concern. They had come to see if their inheritance problem would conveniently solve itself. "Thomas," I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions within me, "I need you to contact this lawyer, Rachel Wilson. Don't tell her about the accident yet. Just say I'm currently unavailable but very interested in discussing my grandmother's estate. See what you can find out about the terms of the will and the inheritance process." As Thomas made the call from outside my room, I lay back against the pillows, mind racing. The heart monitor beside me beeped faster as adrenaline coursed through me. My parents had been willing to let me die for money. They hadn't even bothered to tell me my grandmother had died, probably hoping I would never know about the inheritance at all. Thomas returned 20 minutes later, his expression grim but determined. "I spoke with Rachel Wilson," he said, sitting beside my bed. "She was reluctant to share details with me at first, but when I explained you were recovering from a serious accident, she became more forthcoming. She's very concerned about your parents' behavior." According to Thomas, Rachel had attempted to contact me multiple times before resorting to email. When she couldn't reach me, she had notified my father as the secondary contact, informing him that I was the sole beneficiary. She had been surprised when my father appeared at her office the very next day, claiming I had asked him to handle the estate matters on my behalf. She didn't believe him, Thomas said. "Your grandmother had apparently been very specific about her concerns regarding your father's financial motives. Rachel refused to proceed without direct confirmation from you. That's when your father became angry, threatening to contest the will. Rachel had stood her ground, and my father had stormed out. 2 days later, I had my accident. She wants to meet with you as soon as you're able," Thomas finished. "She seemed genuinely worried about your well-being." I nodded slowly, pieces falling into place. "My parents must have been ecstatic when they got the call about my accident," I said bitterly. "What perfect timing. I might die before ever learning about the inheritance, and they could swoop in and claim everything." Thomas took my hand, his eyes fierce with protective anger. "We won't let that happen." Over the next days, as I continued my painful physical recovery, we formulated a plan. Thomas brought me a new phone with a number known only to him and Stephanie. Using it, I was able to contact Rachel Wilson directly and explain my situation, including the horrifying conversation I had overheard. Rachel was appalled. "Your grandmother feared something like this might happen," she told me. "Not the accident, of course, but your father attempting to circumvent her wishes. That's why she was so specific in her will and why she insisted I reach you personally." She explained that Grandma Eleanor had left detailed instructions with multiple layers of protection to ensure I, and only I, received her estate. She had even included a letter explaining her decision, which Rachel promised to bring when we could meet in person. For now, Rachel advised, let your parents believe you're still unconscious or unaware. It gives us time to secure your inheritance without interference. Once the assets are legally transferred to you, there's very little they can do. It was a waiting game now, waiting for my body to heal enough to leave the hospital, waiting for the legal processes to move forward, waiting to confront the people who had been willing to let me die for money. As I lay in that hospital bed, I made a promise to myself and to Grandma Eleanor's memory. I would not only survive, I would thrive. And I would make sure my parents and brother learned that some betrayals come with consequences they couldn't imagine. Exactly 7 days after they had first visited and left me to die, my parents returned to the hospital. Stephanie, who had become not just my nurse but my friend and ally, alerted me to their arrival. They're speaking with Dr. Carter now, she whispered, checking my IV. Remember, as far as they know, you're still unconscious most of the time and don't remember anything from the night of the accident. I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves before closing my eyes and assuming the position of a semi-conscious patient. Thomas, who had been reading beside my bed, squeezed my hand once before stepping out to get coffee, our prearranged signal. The door opened, and I heard 3 sets of footsteps enter the room. My parents and, based on the heavier tread of the third person, my brother Michael. As you can see, she's stable but still experiencing periods of unconsciousness, Dr. Carter was explaining, his professional tone masking the contempt I knew he felt. The brain trauma was significant, and while the swelling has reduced, we're still monitoring her cognitive function closely. Will she recover fully? My mother's voice, precise and controlled as always. It's too early to make definitive prognosis with brain injuries, Dr. Carter replied. Some patients make complete recoveries, others experience lasting effects. And how long before you'll know? My father asked. These things can't be rushed, Mr. Reynolds. Your daughter's body needs time to heal. There was a pause, and then my brother's voice, closer to my bed now. She looks terrible. She was in a catastrophic car accident, Michael, Dr. Carter said dryly. Few people look their best after such trauma. I meant no offense, Michael backpedaled. It's just shocking to see her like this. We're all very concerned. I felt someone take my limp hand. Michael, based on the position. It took every ounce of self-control not to flinch away from his touch. Can she hear us? He asked. Possibly, Dr. Carter answered. Many coma patients report later that they were aware of visitors. I encourage family members to speak to their loved ones, even when they appear unresponsive. We'll need a moment alone with our daughter, my father said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. I heard Dr. Carter hesitate before responding, of course. I'll be at the nurse's station if you need anything. The door closed, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, my father spoke in a low voice. This is a complication we didn't need. The lawyer is being difficult about Eleanor's estate. She insists on speaking directly to Amanda. How's that supposed to happen if she's unconscious? Michael asked, dropping my hand unceremoniously. It doesn't, my mother replied calmly. That's the point, Michael. If Amanda remains incapacitated, James will petition for conservatorship. As her next of kin, he would be able to make decisions regarding her assets, including any inheritance. And if she wakes up? Michael pressed. Let's hope she doesn't remember much, my father said. The accident provides a convenient explanation for memory gaps. We simply tell her that Eleanor left her portion of the estate to you, Michael, as was always the plan. I felt sick listening to them casually plot to steal my inheritance through lies and manipulation. But I forced myself to remain still, gathering every damning word as evidence. What if she does remember? Michael sounded nervous. What if she already knows about the will? She doesn't, my father snapped. Rachel Wilson confirmed she hadn't been able to reach Amanda before the accident. And even if she did know, a traumatic brain injury often affects recent memories. We'll simply express concern about her confusion regarding grandmother's wishes. Besides, my mother added coldly, if she remains in this state much longer, the doctors will recommend long-term care. She'll need a guardian appointed. Your father. Then it won't matter what she remembers. I still don't understand why grandmother would leave everything to Amanda, Michael complained. After everything you've done for her, Dad. After everything I've accomplished. Amanda barely visited in the last few years. I nearly gave myself away then, wanting to scream at his hypocrisy. I had visited Grandma Eleanor regularly, despite my busy schedule. It was my parents and Michael who had rarely made time for her. Your grandmother was always sentimental about Amanda, my father said dismissively. It doesn't matter now. What matters is ensuring the family assets remain with those who know how to manage them properly. Amanda has always been impulsive and emotional, entirely unsuited to handling significant wealth. I need to check on the petition for conservatorship, my mother said. Rachel Wilson is becoming suspicious of our involvement. We may need to find another attorney to represent our interests. I've already contacted Harrison, my father replied. He's preparing the paperwork. We just need to demonstrate that Amanda is incapable of managing her affairs. The longer she stays unconscious, the easier that becomes, Michael observed, with such callousness that I felt a new wave of hatred wash over me. Indeed, my mother agreed, though we must appear appropriately concerned to the medical staff. They continued discussing their plans, unaware that every word was cementing my determination to defeat them. After about 20 minutes, Thomas returned, forcing them to adjust their conversation to more benign topics. Any change, he asked, maintaining his role as the concerned boyfriend unaware of their schemes. None, my father replied curtly. He had never approved of Thomas, considering him beneath our family's social status, despite his successful career in tech. The doctors are optimistic, my mother added with false warmth. We're praying for her recovery. The lies flowed so easily from her lips that an outsider would never suspect the truth. But Thomas knew better, and I could sense his barely contained anger as he reclaimed his seat beside my bed. We should be going, my father announced. Michael has a meeting with the senior partners this afternoon, and Catherine and I have funeral arrangements to finalize. Funeral arrangements? Thomas questioned, the perfect note of confusion in his voice. For Amanda's grandmother, my mother explained. She passed recently. The service is tomorrow. Amanda never mentioned her grandmother was ill, Thomas said. They weren't close in recent years, my mother lied smoothly. Family dynamics can be complicated, as I'm sure you understand. After a few more pleasantries, they finally left. I waited until Thomas confirmed they were gone before opening my eyes, rage and determination burning away any remaining doubt about what I needed to do. Did you get it all? I asked Thomas, who nodded and held up his phone. Every word, he confirmed. I started recording the moment they asked Dr. Carter to leave. I closed my eyes again, this time in relief. Good. Send it to Rachel. Tell her to add it to the file. Thomas sent the recording, then sat beside me, taking my hand properly now. They're monsters, Amanda. I knew your relationship with them was strained, but they've always been this way, I said quietly. I just didn't want to believe they'd go this far. I looked up at him, resolve hardening within me. I need to get out of here, Thomas. I need to claim my inheritance before they find a way to steal it. Thomas nodded, his expression grim but supportive. I'll help you. We all will. And I knew he meant it. In the darkness of betrayal, I had found true allies, Thomas, Stephanie, Dr. Carter, and Rachel Wilson. Together, we would ensure my parents and brother would face the consequences of their callous calculation that my life was worth less than my grandmother's money. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into recovery with a determination that surprised even my physical therapists. Every painful step, Every grueling exercise was fueled by my resolve to escape the hospital before my parents could implement their plan for conservatorship. "I've never seen anyone push themselves this hard," remarked Marcus, my lead physical therapist, as I forced myself to stand on my healing legs for 10 seconds longer than the previous day. "I have motivation," I replied through gritted teeth. While I worked to rebuild my broken body, Thomas and Rachel Wilson worked on securing my inheritance. Rachel had moved with impressive efficiency once she understood the urgency of the situation. "Your grandmother's will is ironclad," she assured me during a covert visit to my hospital room. "She anticipated potential challenges from your father and took extraordinary legal precautions." Rachel had brought the letter Grandma Eleanor had left for me, written in her familiar, elegant handwriting that brought tears to my eyes. "My dearest Amanda, if you're reading this, I've left this world behind. Please don't mourn me too deeply. I've lived a full life, and my greatest joy was watching you grow into the remarkable woman you've become. I've made the decision to leave my estate to you, not out of any desire to create family discord, but because I see in you the values I hold most dear: integrity, compassion, and the courage to forge your own path. Your father and brother have chosen different values, prioritizing status and financial gain above all else. I fear what they might do with wealth they haven't earned. Use these resources wisely, Amanda. Not merely to enrich yourself, but to create meaning and positive change. I trust your judgment completely. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor." The letter shattered something inside me, the last lingering hope that perhaps I had misunderstood my parents, that they couldn't really be as calculating and cruel as they seemed. But Grandma Eleanor had seen their true nature clearly, long before their hospital room plotting confirmed it. "The will specifies that if you were to die, the estate would be divided among several charities Eleanor supported," Rachel explained. "Your father was explicitly excluded from inheritance, though she did establish a much smaller trust for Michael. Your grandmother was very clear about her wishes. No wonder my parents had been so willing to let me die. Not only would they have lost nothing if I had passed away in the accident, but they had likely assumed my father could challenge the charitable designations more easily than he could challenge my inheritance." With Rachel's guidance, I began the process of claiming my inheritance while still in the hospital. Using a secure tablet Thomas had brought me, I reviewed and signed countless documents, established new accounts separate from any family connections, and created a revocable trust to protect the assets. Meanwhile, Dr. Carter had become an unexpected ally. After witnessing my parents' behavior firsthand, he took a special interest in my case, accelerating my treatment plan where medically appropriate and documenting my cognitive abilities thoroughly. Essential evidence against any claim that I was mentally incapacitated. "Your recovery is remarkable, Amanda," he told me during morning rounds. "Physically, you're still healing, of course, but neurologically, you're exceeding all expectations. I see no reason why you wouldn't be capable of managing your own affairs." His official medical opinion would be crucial in countering my father's petition for conservatorship, which Rachel had confirmed was indeed being prepared through another attorney. The hospital bill was another matter entirely. As my parents had made clear, they had no intention of contributing to my medical expenses despite having the means to do so. The costs were mounting daily, already exceeding what my insurance would cover. When the hospital's billing department contacted me about payment arrangements, I asked to speak with the financial counselor directly. "Ms. Reynolds, I'll be honest, these expenses are substantial," said Gloria, the gray-haired financial counselor who reminded me a bit of Grandma Eleanor. "But there are assistance programs." "I'll be able to pay the bill in full," I interrupted gently. "Very soon. I just need a little more time." Gloria looked skeptical. "Your parents were quite clear when they visited our department. They stated they would not be financially responsible for your care." "My parents said that to you?" "Directly." I asked, a new piece of the puzzle falling into place. "Yes," Gloria confirmed, checking her notes. "Your father specifically said, and I quote, "Amanda chose independence from this family so she can handle her own medical expenses." I found it rather cold, if I may say so. Another betrayal to add to the growing list. Even as they plotted to take control of my inheritance, they had made a point of refusing to help with my medical bills. The cruelty was almost impressive in its thoroughness. 23 days after the accident, Dr. Carter determined I was stable enough to be discharged, though I would need ongoing outpatient physical therapy and home care. The question was where I would go. My apartment wasn't accessible for someone still using a wheelchair, and returning to my parents' home was unthinkable. "You'll stay with me," Thomas said without hesitation. "I've already modified my place, installed ramps, rearranged furniture for wheelchair access, converted the home office into a bedroom, so you won't have to manage stairs." I was overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "You did all that without even asking me?" He smiled, taking my hand. "I figured you'd either say yes, or I'd have some very accessible living space for future guests. Win-win." The next challenge was leaving the hospital without my parents knowing. If they discovered I was being discharged, they might accelerate their legal maneuvers or even try to intercept me. Stephanie came to the rescue once again. "Your discharge is scheduled for Thursday morning," she told me. "But officially, you're being transferred to a rehabilitation facility for continued care. That's what will appear in the system if anyone inquires." "Is that legal?" I asked. "Patient privacy laws are on our side," she replied with a slight smile. "And Dr. Carter has approved the discharge plan. The paperwork simply doesn't specify that the continued care environment is your boyfriend's apartment with home health visits." On Thursday morning, Thomas arrived with clothes and a private transport service experienced in moving patients with limited mobility. I said emotional goodbyes to the hospital staff who had become like family, especially Stephanie, who hugged me carefully. "Keep fighting," she whispered. "And let me know how it all turns out. I'm invested now." I promised to stay in touch, and then I was wheeled out through a side entrance, away from the main lobby where a family member might spot me. As the transport van pulled away from the hospital, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since the accident, I was truly free from my parents' machinations, from the hospital's confines, from the constant fear of being found conscious and aware. Thomas's apartment was exactly as he had described, thoughtfully modified for my needs, with a hospital bed installed in the former office and grab bars in the bathroom. He had even stocked the refrigerator with all my favorite foods and set up a workstation where I could continue managing the inheritance process. "Welcome home," he said as he wheeled me inside. "At least until you're ready for something else." I looked up at him, this man who had stood by me through the darkest experience of my life, who had modified his home without guarantee I would stay, who had helped me outmaneuver my own family's betrayal. "Thank you," I said, the words wholly inadequate for the depth of my gratitude. "For everything." He knelt beside the wheelchair, bringing his face level with mine. "You would have done the same for me. That's what real family does." Real family. Not the people who share your blood, but the people who prove their love through actions, not just words. Thomas, Stephanie, Dr. Carter, even Rachel Wilson, they had shown me more genuine care than my biological family ever had. As I settled into my temporary home, I knew the fight was far from over. My parents still believed I was incapacitated in a rehabilitation facility. They were still pursuing conservatorship. They still expected to control my grandmother's estate. But now I was outside their reach, growing stronger every day, with Grandma Eleanor's resources at my disposal and true allies at my side. It was time to prepare for the final confrontation, the moment when they would discover just how catastrophically their plans had failed. With each passing day, my strength returned incrementally. Physical therapy sessions left me exhausted but satisfied as I progressed from wheelchair to walker to cane. Meanwhile, Rachel Wilson worked tirelessly to finalize the transfer of Grandma Eleanor's estate into my name. "We've completed the property transfers," Rachel reported during one of her regular visits to Thomas's apartment. The main residence, the lake house, and the condo in Florida are now legally yours. The investment accounts are next, but those are more complex due to the size of the holdings. I nodded, reviewing the paperwork spread across the dining table that had become my command center. What about my father's petition for conservatorship? Judge Williams has scheduled a hearing for next month, Rachel replied. But with Dr. Carter's comprehensive neurological assessment and my documentation of your active involvement in managing the estate transfer, their case is extremely weak. Still, your father has considerable influence in certain legal circles, so we can't take anything for granted. I tapped my fingers thoughtfully against my teacup. I don't want to wait for the hearing. I want to end this on my terms, not theirs. Rachel raised an eyebrow. What did you have in mind? I want to sell everything, I said decisively. The houses, the investments, all of it. Convert it all to cash as quickly as possible. Thomas looked up from his laptop, surprised. All of it? Even the main house? I thought you loved that place. I did love Grandma Eleanor's house, with its wraparound porch and library full of well-loved books. But I loved my freedom more. As long as those properties exist, my parents will keep trying to claim them, I explained. They'll challenge the will, drag me through court, make my life miserable for years. I want clean breaks, from the properties and from them. Rachel considered this, then nodded slowly. It's unusual but entirely within your rights. Selling quickly might mean accepting slightly lower offers, but with properties of this value, that's still substantial returns. Do it, I said firmly. And one more thing. I want to donate part of the proceeds to the hospital that saved my life, specifically to cover care for patients whose families have abandoned them. Rachel smiled, the first time I'd seen her professional demeanor crack. Eleanor would have approved of that. Wholeheartedly. Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel orchestrated a remarkably efficient liquidation of my inheritance. The main house sold first to a young tech executive who offered cash and a quick closing. The lake house and Florida condo followed shortly after. The investment holdings took longer to liquidate responsibly, but Rachel assembled a team of financial advisors who maximized returns while minimizing tax implications. When the final transfers were complete, I found myself with a staggering $4.3 million in secured accounts, slightly less than the estate's total value due to the expedited sales and associated fees, but still an amount that ensured my financial independence for life. My first act was to pay my hospital bill in full, $387,000 that my parents had refused to help with. My second was to establish a $500,000 endowment for the hospital's patient assistance fund, specifically earmarked for trauma victims without family support. Dr. Carter was speechless when I informed him of the donation during a follow-up appointment. This will help countless patients, he said, visibly moved. People who have no one else to advocate for them. I know what that's like, I replied simply. With my financial future secured and my health improving daily, it was time for the confrontation I had been planning since those first horrible moments in the hospital. I instructed Rachel to contact my parents with a simple message. Amanda Reynolds requests their presence, along with Michael Reynolds, at a meeting regarding Eleanor Reynolds' estate. The meeting would take place at Rachel's office the following Thursday at 2 p.m. They'll come, I told Thomas as I prepared for the meeting. The chance to manipulate what they still think is a cognitively impaired daughter will be too tempting to resist. Thomas watched me apply makeup that concealed the lingering scar on my forehead, a reminder of the accident that had changed everything. Are you nervous? No, I realized, somewhat surprised by my own calm. For the first time in my life, I'm facing my family with absolute clarity about who they are and who I am. It's actually liberating. I chose my outfit carefully, a sleek charcoal suit that projected confidence and professionalism, paired with flat shoes that accommodated my still healing leg. The cane I now used was not the standard medical variety, but an elegant wooden one Thomas had found at an artisan shop. Ready? He asked as we prepared to leave for Rachel's office. I took a deep breath and nodded. More than ready. We arrived early, as planned. Rachel had arranged the conference room strategically. I would be seated at the head of the table, with Rachel beside me, Thomas slightly behind us. My parents and Michael would face me across the table, with their attorney, Harrison Peters, beside them. At precisely 2 p.m., Rachel's assistant showed them in. The shock on their faces when they saw me, alert, well-dressed, clearly in command of my faculties, was everything I had hoped for. Amanda? My mother recovered first, her social training kicking in as she stepped forward with arms outstretched. Darling, you look wonderful. We've been so worried. The rehabilitation facility wouldn't give us any details. I raised a hand, stopping her before she could embrace me. Please sit down. All of you. My father's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation, his legal mind already calculating this new development. Michael simply looked confused, as if the script he had prepared for had suddenly been rewritten. Harrison, my father nodded to his attorney as they took their seats. I wasn't aware this would be a formal legal meeting. Considering the nature of the estate matters at hand, it seemed appropriate. Rachel replied smoothly. I'm Rachel Wilson, representing Amanda Reynolds. We know who you are, my father said coldly before turning to me. Amanda, we've been frantic with worry. The hospital would only tell us you'd been transferred. We've been trying to locate you for weeks. Odd, I replied, my voice steady. You showed remarkably little concern when you told Dr. Carter to let me go because I was just a burden. The color drained from my mother's face. My father's expression hardened. You were unconscious, he said flatly. You couldn't have heard that. Actually, I was conscious for that entire conversation. I heard everything, including your plans regarding Grandma Eleanor's estate. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Harrison Peters leaned forward, a warning hand on my father's arm. Perhaps we should focus on the estate matters, Harrison suggested smoothly. Amanda has obviously been through a traumatic experience, and memory can be unreliable after such trauma. My memory is excellent, I countered. Would you like proof? Without waiting for a response, I nodded to Thomas, who placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. My parents' voices filled the room, crystal clear from Thomas's recording in the hospital room. If she remains incapacitated, James will petition for conservatorship. As her next of kin, he would be able to make decisions regarding her assets, including any inheritance. Their faces as they listened to their own callous plotting were studies in panic and fury. My father lunged for the tablet, but Thomas smoothly moved it out of reach. That's illegal, my father snarled. Recording without consent. Actually, Rachel interjected, Ohio is a one-party consent state for recordings. Since Thomas was present in the room with your knowledge, the recording is perfectly legal. We have several others, if you'd like to hear them. What is this? My mother demanded, her perfect composure cracking. Some kind of blackmail? I leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. This is a courtesy meeting to inform you of several facts. First, I am fully aware of Grandma Eleanor's will and her intentions. Second, I have been declared medically competent to manage my own affairs, rendering your petition for conservatorship moot. And third, I have already claimed my entire inheritance. That's impossible, my father scoffed. The estate transfer requires court approval, which hasn't been granted yet. Rachel smiled thinly. The court approved the transfer 3 weeks ago, Mr. Reynolds. The delay in notifying you was administrative. My father turned to me, his expression darkening. What have you done, Amanda? I've sold everything, I replied calmly. The main house, the lake property, the Florida condo. All the investments have been liquidated. Everything has been converted to cash and secured in accounts you cannot access. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand flew to her throat in shock. Michael stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. You can't do that, my father finally sputtered. Those properties have been in the family for generations. They were Grandma Eleanor's to dispose of as she wished, I corrected him. and she wished them to go to me with full rights to do as I see fit. Harrison Peters was whispering urgently to my father, who waved him off impatiently. "Why would you do this?" my mother asked, genuine bewilderment in her voice. "That was your legacy, your security." "My security?" I repeated incredulously. "You left me to die in that hospital. You refused to pay my medical bills. You plotted to declare me incompetent. And you have the audacity to speak to me about security." For once, my mother had no ready response. I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion churning within me. "You know what's truly ironic? If you had simply been decent human beings, if you had shown even a fraction of the concern for me that you showed for Grandma Eleanor's money, I probably would have shared the inheritance with you. Because that's what family should do." Michael finally found his voice. "So that's it? You get everything and we get nothing? After all we've done for you?" I couldn't help but laugh, a short, bitter sound. "What exactly have you done for me, Michael? Besides hope I would die so you could get your hands on money you didn't earn." He flushed, unable to meet my eyes. "This isn't over," my father threatened, the lawyer in him emerging. "We'll contest the sales, challenge the will." "On what grounds?" Rachel interrupted. "That Eleanor was mentally incompetent? Her doctor and lawyer will testify otherwise. That Amanda was coerced? The will was created years before the accident. That you, as her son, deserve a share? Eleanor specifically excluded you with detailed reasoning." My father's jaw worked silently as he processed the thoroughness of his defeat. "I have one final matter to address," I said, pulling a manila envelope from my briefcase and sliding it across the table. "These are copies of the recordings, Dr. Carter's notes about your hospital visit, and statements from multiple hospital staff regarding your behavior. If you pursue any legal action against me or attempt to contact me again, these will be made public. I'm sure your law firm and social circle would find them fascinating." My mother blanched at the threat to their carefully cultivated reputation. My father's face contorted with rage. "You would blackmail your own family?" he demanded. "No," I replied, rising from my chair, leaning slightly on my cane. "I would protect myself from people who have proven they don't deserve to be called family. There's a difference." I moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to face them one last time. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising even myself with the realization. "I pity you. All the money and status you've chased has left you with nothing that truly matters. Grandma Eleanor understood that. Now so do I." Without waiting for their response, I walked out of the conference room, Thomas at my side. As the door closed behind us, I heard my mother begin to sob and my father's voice raised in anger, but the sounds grew fainter with each step I took away from them, until finally, there was only silence. Outside, in the bright autumn sunshine, I took a deep breath of freedom. "That's it, then," I said quietly. "It's really over." Thomas took my hand, his touch grounding me in the present moment. "Not over," he corrected gently. "Just beginning." And as we walked away from the last remnants of my toxic family ties, I knew he was right. This wasn't an ending. It was the first day of a life truly my own. 6 months after the confrontation in Rachel's office, I stood in the sunlit conference room of my new company, Resilience Technologies. Around the gleaming table sat my small but dedicated team, brilliant minds I had carefully selected not just for their technical expertise, but for their compassion and vision. The prototype testing exceeded expectations, Thomas reported, projecting graphs onto the wall screen. As my business partner and head of development, he had been instrumental in bringing my concept to life. "The patient monitoring system is showing a 97% accuracy rate in predicting potential complications during recovery." I nodded, satisfaction warming me from within. The technology we were developing, a sophisticated system to monitor trauma patients and alert medical staff to subtle changes in condition, had grown directly from my own experience. If such a system had existed during my hospital stay, my parents' neglect might have been documented even without Stephanie's intervention. "What about cost?" I asked. "Remember, Our goal is to make this accessible to every hospital, not just the elite facilities. We're working on it, Lisa Chen, our operations director, assured me. The manufacturing scale is the key challenge, but with the new partnership with MedTech Industries, we should be able to reduce unit cost by nearly 40%. After the meeting concluded, Thomas lingered as the others filed out. You realize what day it is? He asked. I smiled, nodding. 1 year since the accident. He took my hand, his expression serious. How are you feeling about that? I considered the question, not with the quick deflection I might once have offered, but with genuine reflection. Grateful, I finally said. As horrible as it was, that accident showed me who really mattered in my life. Who I really am. We walked together to the large windows overlooking Seattle's skyline. My slight limp was barely noticeable now, after months of dedicated physical therapy. The worst of the physical scars had faded, though I would always carry reminders of that rainy night when everything changed. Have you heard anything from them? Thomas asked carefully. We rarely spoke about my family, but the anniversary made the question natural. Nothing direct, I replied. Rachel mentioned my father's law firm asked him to step back from client-facing roles after some personal issues affected his performance. Michael apparently took a position at a smaller firm in Portland. My mother is still maintaining her social calendar as if nothing happened. And how do you feel about that? I turned from the window to face him. Honestly, I don't think about them much anymore. They made their choice a year ago in that hospital room. I've made mine. My choices had been deliberate and carefully considered. After the confrontation, I had used a portion of my inheritance to found Resilience Technologies, focused on creating innovative patient care solutions. Another significant portion had gone to establish the Eleanor Reynolds Foundation, which provided support for patients without family resources. I had also made personal changes. I'd moved from my pre-accident apartment into a house on the outskirts of the city, not as grand as Grandma Eleanor's old place, but warm and welcoming, with a garden I tended myself and a library filled with books she would have loved. Thomas and I had navigated the transition from boyfriend to business partner with surprising ease, our relationship deepening through shared purpose and mutual respect. The traumatic events we had weathered together had forged a bond stronger than many couples achieve in decades. Stephanie texted earlier, I mentioned as we walked back to my office. She's been promoted to head nurse in the trauma unit. That's fantastic. Thomas exclaimed. We should send flowers. Already arranged, I smiled. And I've invited her to the Foundation's gala next month. Dr. Carter, too. My office reflected the woman I had become. Photographs of new friends and chosen family adorned the walls, alongside framed press clippings about the Foundation's work. On my desk sat a single framed photo of Grandma Eleanor, her eyes twinkling with the wisdom that had seen the truth of her family long before I had. Beside it lay a journal where I occasionally recorded thoughts about my journey. That morning, I had written, a year ago today, I learned that family isn't defined by blood, but by love. I learned that trauma can destroy you or transform you. The choice is ultimately yours. And I learned that revenge isn't about hurting those who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself from their power to hurt you further. Grandma Eleanor knew this. Her gift wasn't just the money. It was the opportunity to rebuild my life on my own terms, surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. The greatest revenge against those who wished me gone has been to thrive in their absence. Later that evening, I hosted a small gathering at my home. Thomas, Stephanie and her husband, Dr. Carter and his wife, Rachel Wilson, and a few close friends I'd made since the accident. As we shared a meal in my dining room, laughter flowing as freely as the wine, I looked around at these people who had become my true family. I'd like to propose a toast, I said, rising from my chair with a grace that belied the titanium pins still holding parts of me together. To unexpected blessings. A year ago, I thought I had lost everything. Instead, I found what truly matters. Glasses clinked around the table, and in that moment of connection, I felt Grandma Eleanor's presence as surely as if she sat among us, nodding her approval. After my guests departed, I stood on my back porch, gazing at the stars scattered across the clear night sky. The cool air carried the scent of the roses I had planted in Eleanor's memory. In the stillness, I felt a profound sense of peace that had been hard-won through pain and betrayal. The family that had once defined me was gone from my life, their absence a healing rather than a wound. In their place were people who had earned the right to be called family through actions, not accident of birth. The wealth that my parents had coveted had become not an end in itself, but a means to create meaning and positive change, exactly as Grandma Eleanor had hoped. The greatest lesson I had learned was perhaps the most important, that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. My parents had chosen greed and deception. I had chosen growth and purpose. I thought back to that terrible moment in the hospital when I had heard my parents dismiss my life as a burden, their casual cruelty nearly destroying me. How fitting that their betrayal had ultimately led not to my destruction, but to my liberation, from their expectations, their conditional love, their toxic presence. My phone chimed with a text from Thomas, just checking that you're okay after today. Call if you need anything. Proud of you. I smiled, typing back, better than okay. Thank you for everything. See you tomorrow. As I prepared for bed that night, I paused before my mirror, studying the woman I had become. Stronger, yes, but also softer in the ways that mattered, more compassionate, more authentic, more present in each moment. The accident and betrayal that might have broken me had instead revealed my true resilience. My parents had let me die, then showed up for the inheritance. But I had reclaimed both my life and my legacy, creating a future they could neither control nor diminish. In selling everything and vanishing from their lives, I hadn't just denied them the wealth they coveted. I had claimed the freedom to become the person Grandma Eleanor had always seen in me. That was the true inheritance she had left me. And unlike money or property, it was something no one could ever take away. What about you? Have you ever had to create boundaries with toxic family members or rebuild your life after betrayal? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's possible to rise from the ashes of betrayal even stronger than before. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the family we choose is more valuable than the family we're born into.